We've got to train in season at least 2 to 3 days a week. We're going to be able to put ourselves in greater opportunities to make more plays.
When you look at his training, what we're going to do is dive into all the crazy stuff that he would do. Now, one of the biggest failures that I see in American football, one of the biggest failures that I see with offensive linemen is they're doing these quarter squats and they think that's going to help their line play.
We're going to go over why you're not explosive enough for football, and we're going to start right now. And when we're talking about you not being explosive enough, we're going to give you 100% actionable items for what you can do and how you can work towards becoming more explosive. And for those of you who don't know me, I'm Olympic strength coach Dane Miller. I've coached at 10 world championships. I've coached at the Olympics, and I've even helped multiple different football players become Power 5 football players, including the starting running back currently at Penn State, Nick Singleton. Now, when we're looking at specifically how to be more explosive or what explosiveness is for football, we have to initially start to think about it's the first step. Okay, so if we're a lineman, it's that first step about 0.4 seconds before you make contact. If we're a wide receiver, it's that first step to set up the defensive back. If we're a linebacker, it's the first read into that first step that we're going to look at. And that's going to lead to putting ourselves into better positions and putting ourselves into more advantageous positions to then make more reads or to then move opponents around the way that we need to so that we can make the play. So if you are consistently getting blown up on that first step, or you're out of position, or even along the lines of you are slow coming out of cuts, or you can't jump high enough, those are going to be examples of where we see that somebody could be more explosive. Full disclosure in this is that if we're training explosiveness in the game of football, we're going to have athletes that can run faster, again, jump very high, but they're also going to be stronger as well. And that's some of the big factors that we've got to bring into this, is that we have to acknowledge what that looks like on the field, and then we have to quantify that. So as a strength coach, we've got to quantify, okay, what does that mean to be more explosive? What exercises can we do? And how can we figure out a good position or a good place to be? And if we're looking at like the high school level, okay, let's think about all high school football athletes that are watching this right now. What can you guys do, and how can you compare yourselves to then make those improvements in your training to be more explosive? One of the big aspects that I think most strength and conditioning coaches, most football coaches struggle with is finding benchmark exercises that will elicit explosiveness. Okay, so if we're looking at like primary movements that will display explosive characteristics, the first one is going to be someone can execute a broad jump very well, meaning they're in a static position and they could jump horizontally as far as possible, okay, in a stable situation. The next one would be executing a vertical jump, moving yourself, your center of mass, as high vertically as possible in as short of a time frame as possible. That's going to be a good display of explosiveness. And then finally, doing an exercise like a power clean or a full clean. And a lot of you guys might not want to do it, but it's going to drastically improve your explosiveness. So those would be those three primary benchmarks that we would use. And if we can take those benchmarks and then look at what those numbers are, then we can put ourselves in a contextual setting to then analyze, okay, this is where this athlete who went Power 5 performed the vertical, a broad jump, and a clean, and this is where I am, and to get to that point, I need to do X, Y, and Z. And then I like to look at secondary benchmarks, the benchmark movements that would be the back end of a clean, a broad jump, a vertical jump. Okay, so like the next level down they're gonna really move the needle quite a bit. And these are gonna be exercises like a single leg squat. So we do a single leg squat, we have range of motion, we have a need to a pad, and we can identify 3 to 5 rep maxes. That's gonna be another way that we can see someone being explosive. And if they struggle with just holding their back foot on the pad, then they're not going to be as explosive as they possibly could because they lack some stability. Okay, the next one would be a high bar back squat. Using Nicholas Singleton as an example, when he back squatted 585 for 5, and he's a starting running back that weighs 230 pounds and he can run a 4.3 940, we can see like that big back squat probably plays a role in his speed, but it also plays a role in his 37-inch vertical. Okay, then we can look at that front squat, and actually using Nicholas, if we can get to the point of hitting a specific number in a front squat, we then know that the clean will improve, and then we then know that we have better dynamic trunk control, which will then lead to better positions, better explosive cuts, and things along those lines out on the field. So we're looking at secondary benchmarks are going to be single leg squat, a back squat, a front squat. Okay, primary are going to be a broad jump, a vertical jump, and a clean. So the time continuum on the primary movements is much shorter. So we have to elicit a large amount of force in a shorter time frame, which is essentially impulse. So we're training impulse with the primary movements, and then we're training strength and power with the secondary movements. Now, the big factor there is like, how can we take somebody like a middle schooler and say, hey, we've got, my son's 12 years old and my son is he wants to become a starting varsity football player. Well, the middle school athlete needs to be looking at the high school numbers, okay, to make progress to the high school numbers. The high school athlete should be looking at like the D3 numbers or the D2 or D1 if they want to go play at the college level. Or a high school athlete, if they're JV, they should be just looking at what it means to be a starting running back and the numbers that would sort of exemplify. So those are some of the big areas that we want to look at. Now, what I would recommend is just as a starting point, if you're an athlete watching this right now, you should be able to broad jump 7.5 feet to 8 feet. Like, we should be able to do that if we're 15, 16, 17 years old and we resistance-based train on a regular basis, 4 days a week on a consistent basis. That's a big one here with a lot of you high school football players. Consistently show up 3 to 4 days a week doing the right program. You should be broad jumping 8 feet. And that would be across the board. Now, if you're a running back, that might be 8.5 to 9 feet. If you're a wide receiver, it's probably going to be closer to 9 feet. If you're a lineman, it's probably going to be closer to 8 feet. But those movements should be around 8 feet if we're looking at that broad jump. Now, the next one, your vertical jump should be 26 to 28 inches. If you're a high schooler and you're not jumping 28 inches or 26 to 28 inches, then we've got some ground that we need to make up. You're not explosive enough. We need to try and improve that vertical jump to then lead to a higher position, to a higher explosive level. And then when you are more explosive, you can make better cuts, you can make better reads, you can make better plays out on the field. Okay, so we're looking at that broad jump around 8 feet, that vertical jump 26 to 28 inches. When we're thinking about a power clean or a full clean, okay, that's going to be like that first step. And it's also going to be that point of contact. In the game of football, you have an opponent. So whether you're on the line and you're making contact with an opponent, you have to be strong. You have to have absolute strength because you're going into somebody else who probably weighs a similar body weight to you. They're applying force into you. You have to apply more force back into them to try and win that battle. So we need to use a movement like a clean that is fast, it's explosive, and it's heavy. And there's a big difference between moving heavy weight and moving heavyweight fast. If we can move heavyweight fast, guess what? Now you can make contact. And I'm having these thoughts of Jan Johnson, who was a linebacker at Penn State who trained with us here at Garage Strength. He went on and played with the Titans for a little bit. Jan was extremely strong, okay, could clean close to 375 pounds. And if he would make contact with a big tight end or something like somebody along those lines, when he would make that contact, then he could make that play a little bit better because he was stronger and a little bit faster. Okay, let's say I'm a high school lineman and I weigh 240 pounds. I should be cleaning body weight to 1.25 times body weight. So if I weigh 250, okay, I should be cleaning 250 to 290 pounds to really start to express that explosiveness. If I'm a running back that weighs 205, I should probably be cleaning like 225 to 250. If I'm a wide receiver, that number, or a D-back, that might look like I walk around at 165 to 170. I should be cleaning 205 to 225. And when you can hit those benchmarks there now at the clean, then the other numbers start to really rise up. I recommend really focusing on the primary movements here. Now, if we're looking at the single leg squat, if I can clean 275 as an offensive lineman, I should be able to single leg squat my knee to the pad, full range of motion for 3 to 5 reps, 275 pounds. So what an easy thing to do as a coach is to take that clean number and say, okay, our primary movement is a clean. Our secondary movement is going to be a single leg squat. Now that single leg squat that we want to work towards is going to be hitting that max clean for 5 reps and hitting it with only putting our foot down one time if we put our foot down. Okay, so we hit that clean 5 reps. And then over time, we will start to see that single leg squat take off. And when the single leg squat starts to take off, it'll often pull the clean up and it's going to improve your speed as well. Okay, that's the other big factor here is that when we're talking about explosiveness, we're not even bringing up the 40, the shuttle, a 3-cone, like standard benchmark drills that we could be using. We're just talking right now about traditional explosiveness, broad jump, vertical jump, cleans. Okay, so the speed aspect's a whole nother world. But a movement like a single leg squat is going to transfer really well to the speed world as well. That's where we've got to see, that low hanging fruit. Now, if we're looking at our front squat, okay, so again, using the lineman example, they clean 275. They should be able to front squat 275 for 5 to 7 reps. Now, if I'm a wide receiver or a D-back or linebacker, let's say I weigh 190 pounds. Let's say my best clean's 225. I should be front squatting 225 for 5 to 7 reps. I would argue that the biggest error I see in most high school football players today is that they're not front squatting. And front squat is a hard exercise. Football's a hard sport. If you all started front squatting twice a week, you're going to get really strong and really explosive. Your vert's going to go up. Your broad jump's going to get longer. Your clean's going to improve. It's going to transfer. And it's never going to get easier. When you front squat 300 pounds, it's still going to be hard to front squat 225. When you front squat 315 for reps, it's still going to be hard to front squat 275. It's just a really tough exercise. And that's why a lot of you guys avoid it. But it probably transfers the best as a secondary lift. So again, 5 to 7 reps with the weight that you've hit as your best clean. Now, the back squat, full range of motion, high bar, full range of motion, high bar back squats. I want to see that to help improve your broad, to help improve your vert, to help improve your clean. And then in turn, when you're making contact as a lineman, if those lifts are getting better, I'm stronger, my first step's better. If I'm a running back, my cuts are going to be smoother. I'm going to get out of the cuts a lot cleaner. If I'm a linebacker, I can meet the pulling guard a little bit easier and then, push them out of the position so I can make the play. If I'm a DN and I have a really good back squat relative to my opponent across from me, I can blow them up even if they weigh more than me because I'm stronger. So back squat, front squat, single leg squats are key for that explosiveness. So in this case, I want to look at that back squat, taking the clean. Okay, so we're taking that clean number and we're saying, okay, if I can clean 275, I should be able to high bar, full range of motion, back squat sets of 10. And this is one thing I'm going to call out a lot of you high school football coaches on, is that you want your linemen to lower their hip level. You want their pad level to get lower, but then you let them do super short range of motion back squats. So then they lack mobility, which means they don't have the flexibility and they don't have the strength in that deep position. Get your athletes comfortable full range so now that they have more mobile ankles, more mobile hips, more mobile back, and they can start to get really strong in that bottom position. So then they can lower their hips and they lower their pad level and they're stronger in that position now. So if we take a step back and we say, okay, we're going to spend 6 months and we're going to max out our clean like the first week out. We're going to do a triple because we don't want to get hurt. So we're going to hit a triple. That's going to help us with a projected clean. Then what we're going to do is we're going to try and hit that for 5 reps on a consistent basis in single leg squat, 5 to 7 reps on the front squat. And then the back squat, we're going to try and hit that 275 pound clean for 10 reps. And then over time, as we hit those numbers, what you'll end up seeing is as your back squat goes up, as your front squat goes up, your clean goes up. When your clean goes up, your broad jump gets longer. You might see athletes start to gain weight and they'll improve their broad jump by 6 inches because they learn how to be springier. They learn how to be more elastic. So all of these numbers are how we've developed our strength training system inside of our strength training app, Peak Strength. We've taken these benchmarks and we've applied them and we've figured out, okay, what level are you at? Are you a beginner? Are you an intermediate? Are you an advanced athlete? Are you trying to go pro? Are you trying to get the NFL, training in a combine setting or a pro day setting? And so when we're looking at these numbers, these benchmarks, they're really a great way for us to use it, like to dangle that carrot in front of the football player. It's a great way for us to see where we're at every 12 to 16 to 18 weeks, okay, when we're testing. And then we can see potential weaknesses in the individual. Some individuals might squat really high and have a bad clean, or they might have a really high clean but a bad squat. And then we can see that relative comparison to their broad and to their vertical. And typically the broad and the vertical will also help us project where they are with their speed, with their locomotion, with their sprinting, with their shuttles, with their cuts, their change of direction. So this is how we've built the entire system inside of Peak Strength. If you guys want to get into the football training around Peak Strength, we're going to expect you to show up 4 days a week. We don't want you to go into Peak Strength and just show up and train twice a week. We want you in there 4 to 5 days a week, focusing on your strength, focusing on your speed, focusing on your explosiveness. We want athletes who are willing to work hard. And when you're willing to work hard, head over to peakstrength.app, the Google Play Store or the Apple iOS Store. You can download Peak Strength. select that you want to train for football, and then you're going to have a position specific aspect that you can click on. Because remember, freaks, if you want to become explosive, you've always got to cultivate your power. Peace.
So the first aspect is we want to focus on speed. And when we're training speed, we're going to be able to put ourselves in greater opportunities to make more plays. So we have to look at developing locomotion, developing acceleration, and even developing that transient speed. And that first aspect is that we want to use a tool that's really good at helping with speed. And we are going to use a sled. And we're going to demonstrate a sled exercise here with starting linebacker at Pitt, Brandon George. And so Brandon is going to demonstrate a sled march, and we want to just focus on nice and strong, feel good knee drive, good, maybe a little more forward lean, good, boom, 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 boom. And we're going to do this for about 5 to 6 sets, building up, feeling that energy get into the ground, okay? And this is something that you can do earlier in your training in the off season to develop that power output. And then as you get stronger with the sled march, you can start to work into more rapid accelerations. You can start to lighten the load down to about 10% body weight and get even faster. So that second sled exercise is going to be a heavier sled push. And what we want to focus on here is going to be similar to that sled march, but we can get an even steeper shin angle. And I really like this if we're an edge rusher, or even if we're an offensive lineman or an interior D tackle. And in Brandon's case, as a linebacker, there are going to be times where he's taking on blockers or he's blitzing and he's going to be hitting somebody. So this is a good exercise to use to try to get stronger and apply a ton of force into that opposing object. So one thing we can go here is pretty heavy. We want to get nice and steep, drive forward as hard as possible. So this is something that you could do, let's say 5 sets of 20 yards each way at a decent clip. And one thing that you can think of is by like the 3rd, 4th set, load it pretty heavy, and then maybe on that 5th set, take it like 90 pounds off and go a little bit quicker. All right, so this third exercise is a movement that I love to do because you're gonna do speed work with intent. And this is gonna be something that you can use for transient speed. This is gonna be something that you can use for cutting. Sometimes when we run sprints, if we have a little bit more of an intent, we're just gonna kick it up a notch just by having that goal of what we're trying to get to. So in this case, we've got a lacrosse ball. I'm going to throw the ball up. It's gonna bounce. And by the time Brandon touches the cone down here and comes back, he has to catch us before the second bounce. There we go. And so that's something you can do 5 sets to each side. It's something fun that you can do. You can even take your football team out and some of the wide receivers can do the cutting drill while your linebackers and running backs can do this. It's a really, really good exercise to use to develop speed and that cutting capability. So when you're selecting exercises specifically for football, there's 4 key aspects that we want to focus on. The first thing, upper body strength and power. Second thing, 100% focus on speed development. Third aspect, lower body impulse and strength as well. And that fourth coveted factor is developing that dynamic trunk control so that you can cut, so that you can hit, so that you can be much more aggressive out on the field. And all of these elements can be found inside of our strength training app for football players, Peak Strength. The first workout of the week, we're gonna develop that lower body strength. The second workout, upper body power and strength. Third workout, this is where we're gonna do athlete day and focus on speed. Fourth workout, this is gonna be impulse focus. Fifth workout, if you're gonna train 5 days a week, that's where we're gonna develop that hypertrophy. Football is a sport that requires a large amount of speed, power, and strength. And now that we have speed covered, we've got 7 more movements that you guys can use today in the gym to develop that football power. Okay, so the cool part about a sled is that you can use it to develop your speed and to develop your leg power, and you can also use it for your upper body strength. And one of the big aspects around football is that our upper body has to be really, really freaking strong so you can handle taking big time hits and handle giving out big time hits like Brandon did this year against Florida State. And then what we want to see is that that strength can also be used at high speed. So Brandon is going to get off the assault bike and he's going to demonstrate the sled pull with a rope. And so I like using about a 2-inch rope here, focusing on that grip and focus on a nice pull that accelerates through each stroke here. This is probably one of the biggest upper body exercises that Brandon did growing up. And one thing I love about this is when you're grabbing here, and you're grabbing, like let's say you're getting a wrist or anything along those lines, this is gonna help move somebody when you're out on the field. And then we're gonna get into the next exercise that's gonna have even more grip work. Okay, so this next upper body exercise, we're gonna use the garage grips to try and stimulate more motor units from your prime movers and your lats in this case, and also from your grip. So Brandon's going to demonstrate a seated row with the garage grips on. And one aspect here that we forget when we're doing something like this that can be considered a bodybuilding movement is that this is gonna transfer really, really well to protecting the ball if you're a running back, even if you're a wide receiver, grabbing jerseys, grabbing wrists, trying to move an opponent. This plays a massive role. And if we can just develop that upper back, develop the lats, develop lower traps as well with this seated row, we're gonna stay healthier throughout the season. And I would do this, 4 sets of 17 to 20 during the hypertrophy point of our training system. Okay, so the next exercise that we're gonna do is dumbbell bench with a pause on command. And in this case with Brandon, because he's on the defensive side of the ball, I am going to use my hand as a target for when he's gonna move. Now, if I had the offensive side of the ball, I might use my auditory command and say, go. I'm gonna do both here with Brandon, but this is gonna be something that we can develop, that shoulder girdle, the pecs. Then again, think about when we were talking about with the sled, him posting up potentially here. This is going to be an absolutely fantastic movement that we wanna look at as developing throughout the season to get that max strength in our pecs, our shoulders, and our triceps. Ready, big dog? Go, go. There you go. 2 more. Go. 1 more. There, good, okay, good. So we could do this like 5 sets of 5 building up, and then 1 set of 12 to 17 reps to just get a huge pump at the end of that workout. So another awesome upper body exercise to develop strength and hypertrophy is going to be dips. And we can do this as a calisthenic movement, or we can put on a whole bunch of weight. And maybe you do dips with like 315. So we're gonna go here. And we have this unique contraption where we have a shaky dip stand. That actually forces you to focus a little bit more on that trunk control, which we talked about in the beginning. So Brandon, get on here. Let's see if you can do full range of motion dips.
Yep, there you go. I was wondering when you were gonna bring that up.
And this is a great way to help with stiff arms, great way to help with tricep strength. And again, if you can improve your dip strength, see, they don't have these contraptions at the collegiate level. We have such a unique contraption that it shakes while you're doing it. So it just adds a degree of difficulty.
That's high performance technology.
Yeah, that is 100% high performance tech. We get in here, we do 4 or 5 sets, building up to like a top 5 rep max. So we got like 100, 150 on, and then we finish with like 2 sets of 20, just repping out here. This is gonna be a great way to develop tricep strength. That's my lockout.
I think that was 3 reps in total.
Pec strength, and it's gonna help you be stronger later in the 4th quarter. Like you, Brandon, always strong in the 4th quarter. So we know that upper body strength is necessary. We also need to develop a lot of power and impulse expression from our legs. So the legs play a massive role in locomotive speed, right? Think about how can we develop them to be extremely powerful, extremely explosive, and to execute that high level of impulse expression. That means a large amount of force in a short period of time, and that's where the next 3 movements come into play. Okay, so the next movement we are going to do, let's say 5 sets of 3 on each side, and we're gonna use this technologically advanced piece of equipment available at garagestrength.com, our single leg roller and pad. And so Brandon has done upwards of 182 kilos in the single leg squats, and actually yesterday just did 160 in just his 2nd week back of training here. So he's gonna demonstrate unbroken single leg squats, down, up, nice and fast, but he's gonna focus on that trunk control as well, and that's gonna help improve his ability to cut, but also his unilateral strength. So unbroken single leg squats, 5 sets of 3 each side. Better make it perfect, Brandon. You only got 70 kilos on. 2, 3, perfect. 1, 2, 3, good. And now one thing too that I like to think about with football guys, especially with Brandon, he's a taller dude, right? He's got really, really long legs. Is that sometimes dudes with long legs, not that they shouldn't back squat, but back squat can be more challenging for them, relative to, let's say, a lineman who might be tall but has shorter legs. based off of their torso length. In this case, with Brandon, he's got those longer legs. We can really target that and develop his posterior chain very, very well with the single leg squats, and longer limbed individuals will develop more leg strength from single leg squats than they would from traditional back squats. But they should still back squat as well. Okay, so this next movement is gonna be an exercise that you can use to develop that overall impulse with really, really heavy weight. And one of my favorite quotes is just learn how to move heavy weight fast. And when we're looking at this specific exercise, we're gonna do this on the minute, meaning every 60 seconds, you're hitting a freaking rep. And we've even done this with Division II All-American DK Hoagland, where we would do 15 sets of this, prepping him for getting in season, and he would work up to around 170 to 175 kilos. So Brandon's gonna mimic this here, an on the minute, 1 box clean. So nice and fast, right off the boxes, catch that really, really tight. He's gonna drop it, we'll rest 60 seconds, and then we'll hit another one. Boom, good. Okay, so he can hit that. Let's hit it for a double actually, because that's so light. Let's say he hits this for a double, right? Boom, okay, he drops it. Now we'll put the timer on, we'll rest 60 seconds, he rests for 60 seconds, and then we do another double. And then the thing is that let's say that we're 8 to 10 weeks out, when you start to see a room filled with football kids, okay, one thing with on the minute stuff is it's easier to control the room in that setting. The second aspect is that they start to get dialed in on that rest period, and they're really just starting to focus. And sometimes you will see them hit monster PRs because they get into a really, really good rhythm where they're not as distracted as they otherwise might be when you're in that high school setting. So another one here, double Brando.
You got it, Captain.
Boom. Good. Great job.
Like by the time I got to high school, I had a training age that was equivalent or higher than most of the kids I was playing with.
Right, and so you were probably cleaning, I'd have to look at the backboard, but you were probably cleaning over 250 and benching close to 300.
Yeah, I was at like 305
Yeah.
going into high school, and I was like 260 something
Yeah.
on clean.
Yeah, and that's the thing. It's like
before
those,
I really got into high school.
using those benchmarks then, one, for kids in high school or kids in middle school, depending, even kids in high school. Brandon plays at Pitt, starting linebacker at Pitt, and it has had phenomenal games this year against Notre Dame, against Florida State. And it's like, we can use that then as somebody on the outside, you can look at this and say, okay, if that's what he did, if I want to get to that D1 level, if I want to be ready, I can hit these same benchmarks. And that's the exact system that we used with Brandon. The exact same system is inside of Peak Strength. We programmed everything inside of there. You download Peak Strength, you can go in and select football, and you can select that you want to train like a linebacker, a running back, a skilled position like a wide receiver potentially, or a quarterback, or even if you're a defensive lineman or an offensive lineman. So head over to peakstrength.app, the Google Play Store or the Apple iOS Store. You guys can get on the exact same system that we use to develop Brandon to be a total savage.
And the same system they use to develop absolute freaks in the gym.
Yeah, that's nice. Okay, one of my favorite exercises to improve your vertical jump, to improve your jumping capability, to improve your speed is going to be a hip power snatch, which Brandon is going to demonstrate. What we want to see is a little bit of load on those hips, almost like a counter movement, okay, and then explode up and punch with those shoulders. Boom, good. Give me 2 more. We're gonna feel good trap movement there. Good, 1 more. Big explosiveness. Good, and this is something that you can do in season because it's going to be a little bit lighter. It's gonna help you feel like you're moving that heavyweight freaking fast, and it's gonna help you hit quite a bit harder. Technically, the next exercise is going to be the fastest of them all. And I believe this movement can be the best at developing, again, that vertical jump, just like that power snatch, but also that hard hitting capability. And that is going to be a behind the neck jerk, which you're ridiculous. So Brandon's gonna do, let's say 6 doubles or 5 triples. And we wanna think about getting into that counter movement here, driving that quickly, and you can get into a split, or you can do this into a power position, anything along those lines. When Jan Johnson was training with us, prepping to go to the Titans, one of the things that we would do with Jan even was do linebacker jerks right off the boxes, which we've used in other videos. So with Brandon, I want to demonstrate that behind the neck jerk. Nice and easy. Good, give me 1 more. Good. I do want Brandon to now demo that linebacker jerk. So you'll go under the bar, right off the box, drive up, and get right into that split. Yeah, this is perfect. I mean, Brandon is a linebacker, and I'm gonna share. There you go, nice. It's a little light. When Brandon was in high school, I want to say behind the neck jerk, like 150, 160, something like that. So like 330 to 350 pounds. This year when he had a tip ball, okay, so he had a tip ball against Notre Dame, first quarter tip, he ended up picking the ball. The first thing that I thought when I saw that play, him driving 150 kilos as fast as possible, hitting into this position and being stable. And that's the big thing here with the behind the neck jerk. It's gonna help you be explosive. Then you're stable here. Brandon makes that nice little tap and then picks the ball, takes it back, 10 yards or wherever it was. But some of these athletic movements that are done at really, really high speeds transfer very, very well. You've just got to figure out where they need to go inside of your programming. Okay, so this next exercise you can use to develop that trunk control rotationally. Okay, so we want to see if we can plant and accelerate out of that cut really, really well with this rotational med ball throw. And there's a unique progression that you can do where you can just go standing side med ball throws. Okay, let's say you do 3 sets of 5 to each side. But then as you get more advanced, as you're getting closer to the season, we want to start to be a little bit more specific. So Brandon's going to demonstrate with a side jump into a side plant and an aggressive throw into the wall. Give me 3, Brandon. And you can use this to juke. Boom, good. Perfect, 2 more. Try and cut out of that as quickly as you can. Boom, boom, good, 1 more. Nice and fast, explode, boom. So it's like as he rotates, he's gonna get out of that. And think about with Brandon as a linebacker, he might plant, hit somebody here as quickly as possible and get out of that cut if he's blitzing, if he's in coverage, wherever that might be. 1 more. Good. Toes up. Then you gotta go roll like this. Then this. And then the jumps on the from black mat to black mat. So toes up more. Yeah, that's fine. Then after the jumps, you gotta do the hips. Get your hip through there like that more. He's doing a hip extension, almost like, not technically a 90-90, but he's extending his hip. Mainly because his hips are tight on the left side, his left hip. How about we just go PBC, the jump, and then the hip again. So main focus on the warm-up is improving his foot strength, his ankle mobility, his sort of like the stiffness in his ankle, but through a greater range of motion. So working on his dorsiflexion is not the greatest, but the more that improves, the better he'll be able to cut. We're gonna clean heavy today, and then we're gonna do some heavier single leg squats. So it's like really preparing him neurologically to really attack it. And he has that hip issue where he does sort of shift to the one side because of a hip injury from a couple years ago. So it's like trying to make sure that works itself out before we really start to hammer the weights. So he is putting on my weightlifting shoes. Those weightlifting shoes will raise his heel so he can get a little bit better range of motion, and they're very, very stable. So if he was in his sneakers, it sort of gets like squishy here. Whereas when he has a weightlifting shoe, it's gonna help him have a little bit more support on the heel when he's catching in the hole. How about go 3 powers and then you gotta do 3 front squats on the 3rd power.
they're going off that box. So one of the things that I like with the box is that they have to react a little quicker because it's a shorter pull. It is a little bit easier on their back, so we can push some other lifts as well. Could also make the argument like the position that they're in when they're going to pull is a little bit closer to where he'll be like in his stance as he's preparing to receive the ball or whatever. So it's a little bit more of an athletic stance, but I think it's mainly for me. I like the boxes because it de-stresses their back. It's a little easier on their back, but there's also a little bit more speed involved. They have to move it a little bit quicker, which you'll see. He's cleaned 145 kilos at like 1.42 meters per second. So that's really, really fast for that heavy of a lift. One power, one full. So I'm putting a tool on the bar here so we can see how fast he's moving the weight. So it's like basically creating a profile of, you know, what kind of speed he can put out at certain percentages of his lift. So it's like it helps you determine, one, if we need to go up in weight, but also like a little bit of a profile. So it's like, all right, if his single leg's fast, his back squats are fast, and at certain percentages, what can we work on speed-wise? So it's like this giant formula that you can really put together and use this as like that guide. This right here, he should be moving over 1.5 meters per second, I would say, pretty easily. Okay, Nick. One power, one full. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. So that was 1.92. That's fast. That was good. So his full was 199. Yo, the dumb part is he could clean 400.
What the hell?
You could. They're gonna have videos of Nick on ESPN in like a year cleaning. Freshman at Penn State cleans 405 and he's just catching it. This is cake. This is big weight. Everybody's going ape. That's still really fast. 1.76. Yours is slow though, DJ. Yours is going to show up as slow. The reading is going to say slow.
I'm not too surprised.
That was 218. So DJ's cleaned like 460 pounds almost. That's still like in his body though. Yeah, that was 1.7. That's the thing, it's like 286 and he's moving at like 1.7 meters. That's fast. I mean, most high school kids can't even clean 286. Go to 40, because I think even in the morning, I think he could clean at least 150. 330. Keep in mind that Nick clean and front squatted 330 in his garage when it was like 95 degrees, no music, and me just screaming at him on Zoom. It gives you feedback on lifts to pick. It gives you a little bit more motivation because it's not just the weight on the bar, it's also that speed. He could probably, I bet you if Nick really wanted to, he would hit 330 for like a set of 3 or 4. Ooh. That was faster than your 130. That was faster than 130. Oh, yeah. DJ wins that one.
Really? Wait,
we go 47.
Slow and slow.
47.
What was that?
That was 187. 47 would be like 322. You know, we went up 22 pounds and he got faster. So it's like, all right, now we're starting to see, even as we get into heavier weights, he can transmit a large amount of speed consistently over a longer period of time. And when you're a running back, that's exactly what you want. You want somebody who can, run a 4.5 in the first quarter and run a 4.6 in the fourth quarter, really. Yeah. 189 for DJ. Kids that train with Nick that are going to like Villanova, like a D1 school, can clean 280 to 300 pounds, and that would be like their max. They move that at like 0.9 meters per second or 1 meter per second. So he just did 1.76 meters per second at 325. That's like real good speed, real good pop. We'll start with a big red. Okay, so he's gonna be doing single leg squat. Then Nick's gotta do, this is where he dies. Hold here and press without falling over. Go 7 each side. So ideally he'd have like a 90-degree angle from his knee to his hip and then knee to foot, which he's doing a decent job with. And this will help with his dynamic trunk control so he can cut a little bit better. He's a little more stable. The left hip is where he has that issue. So it's like, it forces him to coordinate a little bit more. And then pairing that with a single leg squat is good, because a single leg squat, you're already in that precarious position. I think the single leg squat is the absolute best strength movement for any athlete really who's in an open skilled sport. So, Nick's the best running back in the country. I believe a lot of that goes to his ability to just smash huge weights in single leg squat. Today we're not gonna go too heavy because he has the All-American game in a week, I guess it is. So it's like, he was already yelling at me for pushing him too hard before the game. Single leg squat will hammer posterior chain. So his glutes, as you can see with DJ in his career, he did a lot of single leg squats. That's why he has such a plump butt. So hamstrings, glutes, and then that stability with his trunk. It's key. It's key for cutting. It's key for that first step. And also, like, think about like Nick. Somebody's hanging on one of his legs as he's hitting the hole. He has that strength to get out of that position. Like single leg, the heaviest triples we've hit was like I want to say it's like 375, 385. And it's like, we don't really need to go much heavier than that. He's already as strong as he would need to be, especially at the high school level. Now he's going into college. He's got the strength. He's got the speed. Now it's mainly just like he's just got to refine his movement a little more. And DJ's gonna be sore for a week from this. Oh, Nick's doing a little better job over there. Yeah, I don't know if that's legal or not. Come on, up fast. Up. Good. Good. So we'll start with this, and the whole point is going to be, I'll spin it, it'll pull you down, and as soon as you get to like here, you got to drive up, and when you get to the top, it's going to pull you down, so you got to brace like the whole time. Then we'll do sled pulls here. When it pulls you,
It's gonna stop.
yeah, let it like keep going, and you can even hold your. I'll drive up. There you go. But let it go right away. Yep. And you can hold here if you want.
Are you supposed to come on your toes on this, or?
Slightly. He could go on his toes a little bit.
Holy.
So that was pretty good. We'll put more weight on. The hard part is like the first couple times you do it's weird, but then like his next set will probably do a better job of reacting right away. So then the sled pull backwards, down and back.
Yeah. Dude, it's like intense.
Nick, just do these. 20 each side. What? Yeah. 20.
What do you think about the flywheel, Nick?
Yeah, hard. Well, first time doing it, but we'll see the second set.
Yeah, that's why it's too deep.
There you go. There you go. Good.
Good. Up. Up. Up fast. Give me 3 more. Good.
Okay, so this is it's a eccentric flywheel, and what it's like, the best way to describe it would be like a living, it's like living feeling, right? So it's like Nick will drive up, and whatever speed that he's driving up at, now it pulls him back down because the flywheel recoils down. So it's like he has to light up his nervous system to absorb that energy back down so that he can then come back up. So if you have athletes that struggle with or that need to improve jumping ability, even if they're like a weightlifter and they struggle to receive a bar, this helps them increase their eccentric strength, which ends up being, and we're gonna test his power output on the next one. You end up seeing this absurdly high power output on the eccentric portion. So I'm gonna measure his power output here. Hopefully this app works. Sometimes it does not. Okay. React faster, there you go. Real fast, up fast and down fast. Come on, up. Give me 3 more. 2 more. 1 big one, real fast, up. Good, good. So one of the things you can do is look at like peak power, then you can just see, actually his last one was extremely high, but you can just see like, all right, how is he responding to the eccentric? And most people, I would say like 90% of people, their eccentric load should be where they see the highest peak power. And then that can teach you, if somebody doesn't have a really high eccentric portion there, that they probably struggle with jumping, they probably struggle with cutting and agility, but as we can see here, Nick does not struggle with that.
How are you feeling right now?
Deep, bro. Go home. Go back to sleep. Go eat first.
My whole goal is the K-box is forceful concentric action with a rapid eccentric action, so you're constantly under tension. The sled pull, there's no eccentric movement, or very, very minimal eccentric movement. So it's a little bit easier to recover from. They get a huge quad pump from both of those. And then there's a little bit more dorsi into plantar flexion on the calf raise, which again, just talking about how we warmed up in the beginning. That's all stuff that is key for cutting, is that his ankle is mobile and stable through that, like a large range of motion. And so if he's got good eccentric strength and he's got good range of motion with his ankle stability, now he's gonna be able to cut really well and accelerate really well because he has tons of strength. How can we make him as strong as possible, as twitchy as possible, as reactive as he can be, so that when he gets into a game situation, his body has all the skills that it needs to recruit properly, using co-contractions all over the place, so that when he hits a cut, he can get out of it as fast as he possibly can.
Oh, there it is. Okay. Up.
Those last 3 were really hard, really high. Your range of motion was a little deeper on that one too, actually. Power output was really high. That's the thing. It's like if you can find the right formula or equation where it's like, how well does he absorb energy? How well does he produce energy at a high speed, at a high load with his weightlifting movements? you know, how well does he pull or push with the sleds, which he has absurd strength where he pulls and pushes. So it's like figuring out like, all right, how can we get him fast? And then how can we get him as explosive as possible? And as he's gaining weight, he actually gets faster and more explosive. That's like the whole goal. My main goal is that when Nick's done at Penn State in 3 or 4 years, I can con him into coming back here to prep for the NFL. At a new facility with like 50-yard turf, a 50-yard field in there where we're doing combine prep running. We have like 10 of those units lined up. Dude, we have lasers too with the sprints. Yeah, like 10. Yeah, we just got one. So we could time like your 10, 20, 30, 40.
We're making moves, Nick.
That's crazy, yeah.
We're making moves.
Yeah.
Now, one of the biggest failures that I see in American football, one of the biggest failures that I see with offensive linemen is they're doing these quarter squats and they think that's going to help their line play. They're doing these power cleans where they starfish and they almost blow out their back catching with their hips really forward. They're doing these movements almost half-assed. They're not executing these exercises properly. And what ends up happening is it doesn't actually transfer over to the field. So we've got to think about, especially at the high school level, we have bigger dudes. We have bigger men playing football. They have struggles, they have problems with full range of motions. They're typically a little bit weaker down in the hole. And what does that mean for field play? If we want to dominate on the football field, we've got to play with lower shoulder pads. Okay, we got to play with lower pads. And our hip level has to be deeper. If our hip level is deep, but we don't have strength in that position, we're going to get owned. Okay, so we've got to think about that. Think about Dane Miller coming off the edge. He's got incredible ankle mobility, hip mobility, knee mobility, lower back mobility. He can dip, he can get under the shoulder pads, and he can make better plays. Think about Joe Thomas, one of the greatest offensive linemen of all time. He could get extremely deep by planting that anchor, lowering the knee, lowering his hip level, and then playing with lower pads so he could pick up any of those speed rushers coming off the edge. Someone like Dwight Freeney, who is one of the greatest of all time, he's one of the few guys that could actually control Joe, and the reason being is that Dwight Freeney could play a little bit lower than Joe could. He's shorter, but he also had lower pad level because of his hip mobility, because of his strength, because of his speed. So we've got to think about when we're talking about lower body strength exercises, we have to train that. We have to train those key elements behind line play. And that's going to take us into that number 4 exercise that's going to improve our lower body strength with line play. That's going to be a pause back squat. And I can hear all the grumbling now. I can hear all the football coaches, they've got their whistles, they're sitting there, they're ready to coach, they're blowing their whistle in their gym, and they want all their guys to do box squats. They're doing box squats to 90 degrees. You know, they're doing low bar box squats, squatting like this, their knees are never actually flexing, and then they wonder why they get owned in the trenches. I want our linemen to go nice and deep, and they could start light. You could start at 135 pounds, 185 pounds, and slowly build up that strength. I want them to get nice and deep so they can improve their ankle mobility, they can improve their knee flexion, they can improve their hip mobility, they can improve their lower back mobility, they're gonna improve their dynamic trunk control. So we're gonna get nice and deep and we're gonna go 1, 2, go, fast out of the hole. Fast out of a very deep position is going to transfer to a lineman who's in a 3-point. If they're in a 3-point, they have serious dorsiflexion in their ankle. They have seriously steep shin angles for the knee flexion. So we've got to train that nice and deep position so then it transfers over to the field. So do this twice a week. You go really light one day, you can go a little bit heavier, try and push that weight a little bit more so you can increase that strength. But this helps improve hip mobility and power from that deep position to help keep those pads nice and low. Okay, that number 3 exercise that now we're gonna work into, this is going to be from a unilateral perspective. This is a movement that I believe a lot of football coaches do utilize, but they don't use it the right way, okay? They sort of just throw it randomly into their conditioning and they don't actually use it to improve strength, to improve that power output. And that is sled pushes. And the reason why I want to use sled pushes as an example is because it helps with that unilateral cycling. It helps with running. It helps with producing a ton of power in a unilateral perspective. That's the key concept here with linemen, offensive and defensive, is that we have an object in front of us. So if I'm a D end or I'm a D tackle, coming off the line, I'm in a unilateral perspective and I'm going to post up. I'm going to post up on one of my offensive guys, a guard, center, whoever it might be. So I'm in a unilateral position and I'm applying a ton of force to try and manipulate them so that I can get to my proper gap. This is where we've got to think about sled pushes. Okay, so a sled push We want to hit that nice and long with our arms, just like we want to post up on somebody, and still be able to apply a ton of force forward. So if we're running, if we're pulling, if we're coming off the line as a defensive guy, we want to post up on somebody so that we can see where the ball is. That's where we use sled pushes. We can use sled pushes where we want to stay nice and deep. We want to see that positive shin angle. We want to see hip extension and even extension in our upper back so that we're driving on the sled and it can be really, really heavy. We have to remember that when we're playing other guys, these guys are going to be heavy to begin with, and then they're going to be applying force back into us. So we want to do heavy sled pushes, heavy sled pushes. And then we can even later on in the week, if we have a game in 2 days, we can do 3 or 4 sets of lighter sled pushes just to work on that speed on the cycling. But one of the problems that I see is that a lot of coaches will do this like real short, choppy pushing when they do the sled. I want to see a long drive, a very long drive that engages the quads and the glutes. That's going to help us run faster. Utilize that short, choppy step if you think that's effective for technique out on the field. Utilize that when you're training out on the field doing your technical work. When we're doing our strength work, I want to see plantar flexion. I don't want to see that heel dropping on the sled push. I don't want to see any heel dropping. That heel has to stay high. I want the knee forward. I want forward chest lean. I want that steep shin angle. That's going to help transfer to good speed, a good drive, faster off the ball, and good contact when we're making that first step. And that's going to help you dominate in the trenches. Now that's going to take us into that second key exercise. And now we're going to be focusing on even more unilateral work. We want to focus on hip mobility, hip flexion, upright trunk, so that we can actually make good plays. If we're leaning too much when we're coming off the line, someone can dump us, okay? Someone's gonna even be able to rip us or swim us a lot easier, right? So we wanna see a dumbbell split squat. And I prefer doing this from an elevated position because it's gonna force us to get a little bit deeper. So we can hold dumbbells upright. We're gonna keep that trunk nice and upright, nice and rigid. We don't wanna be leaning too much, and we want that back knee to drop between the two positions that we're holding. Front foot, back foot. Both of these positions can be elevated, and we wanna drop that back knee down to a pad. Okay, so we're gonna stay nice and upright, drop that back knee down to a pad, and get nice and mobile. That's gonna help open up our hips. A lot of younger offensive linemen will struggle to do this. They'll plop, they'll collapse right away. They'll start to complain that their hip is pulling, that something's pulling in their quad. Some people, when they first do a deficit split squat, it's even gonna pull on their knee a little bit because their quads are so tight and their hips are so tight. So if we can hit a nice deep position and open up those hips, open up, lengthen that quad, and even keep that more upright posture, that upright torso, we're gonna have improved mobility. We're gonna have a more rigid trunk when we're playing, and we're gonna be able to lower our pad level while we're still in a better position, and that's gonna help us to compromise our opponents. Okay, so that's what we gotta think about. When we're training all this lower body strengthening movements for linemen, we've got to think about how can we utilize this stuff to take advantage of our opponents. So deficit split squats, up on elevated positions, holding dumbbells deep. I recommend 7 to 9 reps on each leg. This is going to help with overall speed. It's going to help with improving structural integrity. It's not an extremely challenging exercise, but go into it slowly. See how it feels the first couple of times that you're doing it, and then start to overload it with some dumbbells. And then over time, you're gonna be able to do this with a barbell on your back, and it's gonna drastically improve your unilateral strength and that dynamic trunk control. And then that's gonna take us into the number one exercise that I love to utilize with all of my linemen. It's gonna be sort of like a little bonus where you actually get 2 exercises. Coaches, American football coaches, love to do hangs. They'll do these hang cleans and they'll sort of starfish back and forth. They don't wanna snatch. They don't wanna do anything like that. They don't wanna do snatches. They don't wanna do hang, or they don't wanna do proper clean technique. So what ends up being a problem is that they might hurt their lower back. They actually don't have mobility to catch a clean deep in the hole. They'll catch cleans like this with straps on, all this craziness. So that's why I'm going into a pause below the knee power snatch or a pause below the knee snatch. Let's make our linemen more athletic. Let's help our linemen learn how to recruit rapidly and absorb force quickly. This is why I want to use a power snatch or a full snatch pausing below the knee. So I want to see starting in a full snatch position, a position off the floor. The reason why I want my football linemen pulling off the floor is watch a lineman get into a 3-point stance. When they get into a 3-point stance, the hip angle, the knee angle, the ankle angles are almost identical to pulling off the floor. So why don't we train linemen in that position? What I want to do now is we're going to pull about 4 to 5 inches and we're going to pause. 1, 2, 3. And now if we want to use auditory cues, we can use auditory cues. We can have a go. We can have a QB saying snap or hike or whatever, we go, whatever. Now we can pause there. 1, 2, strengthen their posterior chain, strengthen their lower back, strengthen their hips. And then as they come past the knee, make contact, and then we can catch with that chest coming forward. I believe full cleans, full snatches should be executed by every single lineman. It's going to teach you how to absorb energy in the deep position. It can help teach you how to absorb energy from a power position. So if we're doing this little bonus here, if it's a clean, we can pause below the knee. It's similar to a hang, but it's going to strengthen our lower back even more. If we do a full clean or a full snatch, or a power clean or a power snatch, it still is going to teach us how to absorb that energy. And that's a key component behind taking a hit. If I can take a hit and absorb that energy a little bit more effectively, I can reuse it effectively, I'm probably less likely to get concussions. Okay, so it's also a safety issue here. But the reason why I still want to use a snatch over a clean is because a lot of linemen struggle with mobility through their wrists, their tricep, and into their shoulder. A snatch, it's a little bit easier for linemen to get overhead, and then they just got to learn how to be confident dropping down into the hole. So start with some power snatches, pause below the knee, power snatches, and then you can go into pause below the knee, power snatch, into some overhead squats, and then progress into that full snatch. If your offensive lineman can get into a full snatch position and they're explosive from the pause and they're strong off the floor, they're gonna have better hip mobility. They're gonna be way more explosive because a snatch is a really rapid contraction-based movement. They're gonna learn how to execute muscular actions at a higher rate, and that's going to help them make quicker contact and dominate their opponents inside the trenches. So if you need help with your football-based strength training, click on the link down below, head over to garagestrength.com, and you can pick up one of our football programs specifically designed for linemen. And if you need more content around lineman-based training or football-based training, click on this card right here. Until next time, guys, peace.
You're tired, you're bruised, you practiced earlier. You don't want to be overworked for the game, but is there a way to actually still stay an absolute monster on the field despite this? I'm gonna show you the perfect workout split that you can use to get scary strong while in season, and we're gonna start right now. So to start off, we've got to train in season at least 2 to 3 days a week. And this is gonna be entirely dependent upon the strength of your schedule or on the strength of that next opponent. Weak opponent, 3 days. Strong opponent, 2 days a week. So for training 3 days a week, we're gonna start off with a leg power day. Okay, that's gonna be day 1. Day 2, we're gonna get into an upper body power day. And then day 3 would be that athlete day. Now, if we're only training twice a week in season, that first day would be a leg power day. That second day would typically be an upper body power day. And there might be a little bit of intermingling between a day 2 and a day 3 to fill in just doing that day 2. Now, the biggest thing here, the first part of this algorithm is coming down to establishing what is your strength of schedule in comparison to your specific team and your specific situation. So with Garage Strength program design, we use a term known as rolling compensation. And this is a really, really pivotal point of discussion when we start to look at sports, especially more open skilled sports like football, which is what we're talking about, these other sports that don't have one specific event. If you're looking at a sport like track and field or weightlifting, it's a lot easier to say we are going to peak on this specific date. So you build all of this training into this one specific time to really build into this super compensation. But when you have a sport like football, you have to do this on a weekly basis. So rolling compensation is going to enable you to achieve about 85 to 90% on a weekly basis if you set up that periodization properly. So that big question then comes down to, what type of periodization model can we use? We use parabolic periodization. We've got 5 different phases: the exposure phase, comprehension phase, the ascension phase, the summit phase, the realization phase. In rolling compensation, the two main phases that we're gonna go back and forth between are gonna be the comprehension phase and the ascension phase. And that's gonna help you understand and then build into that long-term rolling compensation. I'm giving away 1 free t-shirt to anyone who won. Comments down below. 2, make sure that all of your channel notifications are active for Garage Strength. And 3, show up to my Tuesday public live to find out if you got this shirt. Now, let's get back to in-season training. So the coaching staff watches film, they see a losing record, and they immediately start to think about, our guys can handle them. Our guys can handle this opponent. Our guys can dominate.
Do we have a chance next week? No, we don't. We're 0-8. We're not good at football.
And so what they can do is that in-season training then comes down to these 3 days. If we have these 3 days and we're thinking about the term rolling compensation, what weekdays are we gonna look at? We gotta think about, if we're playing high school football, typically that day 1 should be on a Saturday. If we're playing collegiate football, that should be done on a Sunday midday, okay, something like that. Now, a lot of coaches might say, I don't want to do that. If you don't want to do that, then you can actually go and train on Monday. But I'm going to pressure you. Try to do day 1 the day after a freaking game. Okay, do it the day after a game, because that's going to help you get everything moving. That's going to help you to stay mobile, and it's even going to help you recover from the game that you had previously. Now, we're going back to this weak opponent. What would day 1 be? This is going to be Saturday. This is going to be the leg power day. Okay, so we got to think about leg power day. So when we're doing a leg power day, 1, we're going to have a technical coordination movement. So we can do a hang clean or a hang snatch, something like that. That's easy. Just 3 sets of 2, 3 sets of 3. Get things moving. Start to wake things up on that Saturday morning after you watch a little bit of film. Then we're going to get into an absolute strength movement. So let's just say full range of motion back squats, 3 sets of 5, and just start at 60% of their best. So you have the football players coming in. You know that next week they have an easier opponent. You do 3 sets of 5, and by that 3rd set, you're ramping up. Maybe you get to 80%. So they start to feel a little bit better. They did that technical coordination movement first. Now, as they work through that absolute strength series, they start to feel stronger, and they can go a little bit heavier by that 3rd or maybe 4th set if we want to do that. Then after that, we're going to get into some hypertrophy and accessory movements. So we're going to get down here. Let's say we're pushing the sled. We're doing walking lunges, something along those lines to really strengthen their posterior chain, get some quad pumps rolling, get those knees to feel a little bit better. That's going to be a phenomenal day 1, especially when they're playing that weak opponent. Now, day 2, this is typically going to be done with high school football on a Monday. Typically, this is the day that a lot of players are playing JV. So most of the squad is going to be in on Monday, and they can do that upper body power day. So let's go here, Monday, upper power, and what's that going to look like? First, let's start off with, if your athletes have access to jerk boxes, they could do push presses, they could do PA presses, they could do linebacker jerks. Most high schools don't have access to jerk boxes, so let's do some easy power snatch, easy hang clean, something simple. Just 4 sets of 2, easy. Now, remember, we have a weaker opponent, and we're starting to feel good. We did a lot of work on Saturday to flush out any of that stiffness from that game on Friday. So on Monday, let's try to push that a little bit more. So we can go 5 sets of 4 on bench press. That would be the absolute strength portion after we do the technical coordination. And then we get into more accessories and hypertrophy work. So we can do dumbbell incline with garage grips, okay? And then dumbbell chest rows to really get a big back pump. And we can even finish off with some bodybuilding movements, so some curls or anything along those lines to just get a pump so our football players feel big. They start to fill out those sleeves. Actually, they look a little bit more intimidating when they step on the field. And then finally, this would be day 3, okay? So day 3 would be athlete day, okay? And what day of the week would we do this? Let's say we're gonna do this on a Wednesday. You can come in, you get on the PVC, start to walk, you start to wake things up. Maybe you want to do some type of easy technical coordination movement. If you don't, that's fine. Make sure you actually wake the nervous system up by doing the PVC pipe walks, and then you can get into some type of jumps. We've got a game in 2 days. Do some easier jumps to wake up that body. So you do a bilateral jump, let's say easy box jumps, right? And we do a unilateral jump that we pair that with. So something like a jump step up. So that's pretty easy. And then the next group of exercises could look like depth drop into one hurdle hop. Just do one hurdle hop. It's in season. We don't need to do 3 or 4 hurdles in a row. We just need to feel twitchy. And we can do the unilateral plyometric with something like skips for height or skips for distance. So when we're looking at a weak opponent, and we know that we've put in that work in the off season, set that up where it would be Saturday, Monday, Wednesday. Worst case scenario, this would be Monday, Tuesday, and then this would end up being cut in half on that Wednesday. So that's one downfall of bumping that workout back to Monday, is that you are gonna lose about half of that athlete day workout on Wednesday, because you don't want them typically lifting 3 days in a row when they're in that in-season training. Because of the weaker opponent, the football players are going to be able to handle a little bit more intensity, a little bit more volume during this week. Again, this would be even the comprehension phase is going to handle a little bit more volume, and then we're going to get into what happens when they have that stronger opponent. So a few weeks later, the coaches are looking at an opponent. They go, man, we've got a doozy on our hands. We've got to play a team who's, let's say, 7-2 or something along those lines. And not only are they 7-2, they've also got a couple D1 recruits. So they know it's going to be a tougher opponent. So when this occurs, the coaches have to think, we need to go into this game with minimal amounts of fatigue. And most fatigue in the weight room is occurring from total tonnage. We get tired from resistance-based training because of how much volume we're doing. And we've mentioned earlier in the video where we talked about the comprehension phase and the ascension phase. So this is where we would go into the ascension phase and cut volume quite a bit. So instead of doing 5 sets of 5, we might do something like 5 sets of 2. So that's gonna help us cut that volume. Now, when this happens, we're playing that stronger opponent. We're only going to train twice in that specific week. Ideally, this would be on day 1, okay, and day 2. Day 1 would be a Saturday. Again, we can go in, and if we're training that Saturday, we're gonna have 6 days to recover. So we can still push a little bit during that leg power day. So day 1 will be leg power day. And we're gonna still set that up with a technical coordination movement and with that absolute strength movement following. I would still use the technical coordination movement to wake up the body, and then I would use the absolute strength movement. If they're feeling decent, we can still push some weight because they're gonna be able to recover by the time we get to that following Friday. Now, one thing that we can bring up is that during the hypertrophy of the accessory movements, we can be a little bit easier. Let's say we do 3 sets of 17 on a reverse hyper, keep the weight a little bit lighter, that's gonna be perfectly fine, but they can ramp up on that absolute strength movement, 2A, and they can gradually build up to a heavier weight on one of those doubles. So using that 5 sets of 2, they get to the point where they're like, all right, I feel pretty good. I loosened up from the game last night. I wanna push this quite a bit. Now, day 2, that's gonna be an upper body power day. Okay, upper body power day is gonna be done on Monday. That means we're still gonna have 4 days of recovery. So we go in and we're gonna cut some of these sets a little bit. We're gonna still do that technical coordination movement. We're gonna still come in and we're gonna do a bench press or an incline bench press, anything along those lines. And we might even still cut an extra set from the accessories or from the hypertrophy exercises. That gives us 4 days of recovery leading into that Friday big game. So the big factor here is when we're playing a stronger opponent, focus on just 2 days of lifting that specific week. And one of the biggest things that we've improved inside of our at peak strength is providing that in-season training. We've laid out in-season training based off of our own experience to make it easier for you guys to set up that in-season training for your specific athletes. So if you need help with setting up that in-season training, head over to peakstrength.app, the Google Play Store, or the Apple iOS Store, and you can download Peak Strength today for 7 free days of training with 5 free workouts. That's gonna help you establish that in-season specific training to optimize your performance out on the gridiron. So how can all this be planned out? I think the easiest thing to think through is what's that lens? The lens is looking at rolling compensation, okay? And then we have to look at setting up the comprehension phase and the ascension phase. Ahead of the season, work ahead. You set up 12 weeks, and I recommend going 8 weeks of comprehension, 4 weeks of the ascension phase. Now, rolling compensation is the yo-yoing back and forth based off that strength of schedule. If we're here in Pennsylvania, right, we're gonna go through 12 weeks if we want to get to the district playoff. Once you get to the district playoff, week 13, week 14, you win that district title. By this time, we're inside of that big peak. Now we're trying to back off and we're really not gonna be training that much at all, okay? But to get through those first 12 weeks, we're gonna be going back and forth between the ascension phase and between the comprehension phase based off the strength of schedule. So the most important thing is look at your opponents, compare your opponents to yourself, understand as a coach, what do you need to do out on the field during those specific weeks, and then what physically do you need to train each week based off that strength of schedule to help optimize your overall performance. If you guys need help with your actual training, you need something that's just gonna get you that little bit of an edge. You need something that's gonna get you from being 5-5 to now being 9-2 to being 10-1. Head over to peakstrength.app, the Google Play Store, the Apple iOS Store. You can download Peak Strength today and you can utilize our in-season training so that you guys can achieve your peak strength. Because remember, freaks, if you want to become a champion, you've always got to cultivate your power. Peace.
Now, James Harrison was a complete, total animal on the football field, right? This was a dude that many quarterbacks feared, many offensive linemen feared. Many guys would come to the line and just be totally worried about the wood that this dude was about to bring. And I think that when you look at his training, what we're gonna do is dive into all the crazy stuff that he would do, but we have to think about, what impact did that have on him and what was this training's purpose, right? And so earlier in his NFL career, he was sort of bounced around the league a couple times. He even played over in Europe a little bit, but he was active from 2002 all the way till 2017 when he had left the Steelers and signed a little bit with the Patriots in 2017. So he was active for 15 years. Now, out of those 15 years, he was a 2-time Super Bowl champion, a 5-time Pro Bowler, and I believe he might have even won like the Defensive Player of the Year because of his speed, his power, his football intelligence, what he could do off the edge, and even being an undersized individual. So that's another thing. At his position, he tended to be a little bit smaller of a guy. He wasn't overly tall, I think around 6 feet tall, but he walked around at like 240, 245 of just pure muscle. So we're going to dive into what he did to become so powerful, so strong, so fast, so athletic, and how that translated to his play out on the field. Okay, so here he is, Scottsdale, 2017. So this is like the last year of his career. 4:35 wake up. Okay, so we got to think about that. By this time, the dude's in the league for about 15 years, and he's waking up at 4:35. He's probably 36, 37 years old. 4:35 wake up time. That makes me feel so pathetic. I struggle to wake up at 5:30 sometimes. Just look at how thick he is, though. I remember this play. Just watching how fast he was, thinking how tired he had to be at the end of that 100 yards. There he is on Joe Thomas. There he is eating up Joe Thomas, one of the greatest left tackles ever. Mr. Jim. Okay, so that first thing I'm starting to see is not only is Harrison working on some major absolute strength. You can see here as he's pushing, the sled just filled with 45s, literally just filled with 45s. Some of the stuff you're seeing him do, he's doing a lot of rotational work. I really like the side lateral bounds with the medicine ball. So you can see that's dynamic trunk control training, right? That's a lot of trunk work from rotational aspects that's going to transfer really well to applying force rotationally while he might have some linear speed work. With him, he had to work on really heavy absolute strength, but also the speed component, the rotational component. Monday's legs, Tuesday's chest and back, and Tuesday you can see those weight releases, so a little slow eccentric. Wednesday he's focusing on some core work right there, good dynamic trunk control work, so he's quick off the edge. Thursday's legs, Friday's upper body again. Saturday's bis and tris. Pretty standard. So he does have a pretty good split. I like that split a lot. Legs, upper body, trunk work, legs, shoulders, and then some bis and tris on Saturday. I think that's like a pretty standard, not super complicated. It's easy. Dude, that's the thing. We got to keep stuff easy. But you just got to lift big weights, be explosive, and work the right movements. And I think that's what was key here. You can see getting a little lazy in those positions on the cut. I don't like getting stuck with needles. So it looks like he's doing some dry needling. So this is, I think this video is great for high school football players, for collegiate football players. You can see not only the work that he's doing, but the recovery. And the thing is, like, not everybody's going to have a team like he was able to afford to have around him. You know, chiropractor, masseuse, dry needling, his own personal trainer, somebody who actually works his mobility as well. But we've got to take what you can from that and say, all right, if I'm at the high school level, I can do my own mobility, I can do my own yoga work, I can get like a roller or something else to help me with massage or along those lines. And I have to prioritize my recovery. I have to prioritize my nutrition. That's something that he's even stated, is how much he would eat and focus on his eating, and then realize that you've got to push yourself. You've got to wake up early and get after it. That's crazy. So that's that attitude that he has, is because he was cut so many times, he's literally just focusing on making the team every single year. He has to make the team. That's what's fueling him all the time. And I think that, you know, this is a guy who's a 5-time Pro Bowl or 2-time Super Bowl champ. You've got to have that attitude of, we don't have them, but a lot of people will sit there and think like, oh, they're God's gift to the world. Meanwhile, this dude's a 5-time Pro Bowler and he's still waking up at 4:30 in the morning. He's still doing crazy glute bridges here. Okay, so glute bridge work. And I remember this was like the video that really blew him up on Instagram because of how much, I think it was an 800-pound glute bridge along with the sled push. So just serious amounts of strength. Maintaining that strength with some good speed work, some good bodybuilding work. That's the core behind really good athletic-based training. You've got to be strong, you've got to be fast, you've got to be explosive, you've got to work all those things. And he's given us the split. He's given us the key to what we can do to get to that point. Some unilateral work there with the landmine. Great single leg squats. Everybody knows how much Garage Strength loves those single leg squats. This is my favorite movement, absolute favorite movement especially for a linebacker, somebody that needs speed. Now look at this dips. We got, what is that there? 180, 235, that's solid. That's good. Going power cleans. That's what, 315? Yeah, power cleans at 315. Shit. For a triple. Damn. So power cleans at 315. Now he's got trap bar deadlifts. Now we're looking at 495. So guys, this is the example. This is where you can work towards. This is where you can become bench pressing 365 with chains. These are all numbers that they're achievable. This might not be achievable. Close grip, high incline with 315 for a couple reps. That's hard. But we saw the work he's doing now. Bottom base kettlebell press. I like this stuff. This is great, and it's fun. It's like you've got that main explosive lift with the cleans, and then you do some big time strength work with the deads or with the back squats or single leg squats, and then you go off of that and you do all of your accessory work, your unilateral work, any of those positions that you need to hit to really try to improve. Now, one of those final things I want to get into, great ab work here. Man, love this. This dude's literally giving us direct peek into his full training. I know this video is from a while ago, but it's stuff that we gotta still use, and I'm gonna take some ideas right from this. So he does a lot of 1 1/4 reps as well, which makes me feel good about myself because we always do 1 1/4 reps. It's okay to do bicep curls. James Harrison does bicep curls. We can all do bicep curls. Okay, so we know he's an absolute animal. Think about like diving into just watching that sled push with 1,000 pounds on it. That's serious strength, unilateral strength, big power moving forward. If he's got an O lineman in front of him, someone like Joe Thomas, he is directly in front of him. He has to apply a ton of absolute strength to try and move it, but he also has to be really fast off the line. So he's got to do those power cleans. He's got to be really mobile in that unilateral position. So he's doing those single leg squats. So what we can do is sit there and pull from that and say, guys, 5-time Pro Bowler, he's waking up at 4:30 in the morning to go out to go training. He's approaching every single season as though, one, it might be his last, but two, he He doesn't know if he's going to make that team, so he has no ego. He's just going out to work. He's doing big weights, okay? He's doing explosive movements. He's doing a lot of dynamic trunk control movements. He's doing a lot of bodybuilding movements. He's prioritizing his recovery. He's making sure he's eating really, really well. He's making sure, you know, he does have that team behind him, but we can still do things like that as high schoolers, as collegiate athletes. You can still push yourself with all these specific movements, setting up that standard routine, making sure that you follow that routine to a T. And that's how you go from getting cut 10 times in the NFL to being a 5-time Pro Bowler and a 2-time Super Bowl champ. So James Harrison, he's a complete absolute machine. If you want more content around football-based training, click right here. If you need help with football-based programming, click on the link down below, head over to garagestrength.com and you can pick up our How to Get Faster training program, where we do a lot of big lifts, a lot of explosive movements, and work that dynamic trunk control to help your speed continuously improve. Until next time, guys, peace.
Is there any clear splits, a leg split, an upper body split, or hitting muscle groups X number of times per week that you recommend or that you've seen within the research?
I actually favor full body workouts for most people.
Because they're just learning how to move with the intent to move things faster. Is there anything to that, or is that still just voodoo